Shabbat Shalom. This week we are studying and reading the portion of Vayigash. Okay, this is entitled How to Grow to Success. This question has been floating around my head lately. At the end of the secular year 2024, many of my relatives and friends went to a church to hear messages about how to recap the secular year and face the new challenges in 2025. Although the Torah is clear that our new year is a Pesach, we have substituted it with tradition of celebrating Rosh Hashanah close to Yom Kippur and Sukkot as the beginning of the Hebrew year. Be as it may, what we know is that cycles are fulfilled. Life is, in fact, cyclical, coming and going, spinning and turning to begin again. The important thing is not to form the cycles into a flat circle, but rather of ascending spiral. To focus more deeply on this portion, we must look at the past life of Joseph and Judah, who are the epicenter of this week's portion by Yigash, as it focuses on the restoration of the order in relationships in the family of Jacob. In short, the portion speaks of the dialogue between Judah and Joseph to free Benjamin. Then the Torah teaches us that Joseph can no longer contain himself. He finally revealed himself to his brothers, understanding until that moment that the purpose of his suffering before coming to be viceroy of Egypt was to save the descendants of Jacob, who will be the future nation of Israel. God had spoken to Jacob in a dream, indicating that they will descend to Egypt, but they will return to a land of Canaan promised to Abraham. In the end, Joseph solidifies Pharaoh as owner of all the possessions, lands, and people in Egypt, and manages to send his family to a fertile land in Goshen so that they can settle and be prosperous. But then, how do we connect the initial question, how to be prosperous in this new cycle? It is common at the time of the year to hear the phrase, have a happy and prosperous 2025. One wonders, do we really understand the scope of this phrase? Honestly, it couldn't be more Jewish. The word understand that being happy means a smiling selfie, a photo, and living joyful moments. On the other hand, being prosperous means being at the top of economic well-being without experiences any need. To a certain extent, it is valid, but to be honest, is incomplete. This portion sums up being happy and being prosperous. To achieve both of these things requires effort. We begin by saying, Vayigash elav Yehuda Vayomer, which means Judah approached Joseph and said to him. This portion implies the first practical lesson of life. We must make things happen. Yehuda could have waited and remained silent, leaving Benjamin as collateral. Here we see that Yehuda had changed, possibly with the episode, uh, sorry, possibly with the episode of Tamar leading him to think that being a Sadiq is showing in deeds and not in words. He was directly responsible for having sold his brother in the past and for having started a deep pain on his father's heart. Approximately 22 years after that episode, he was no longer insensitive to the pain of his brother, perhaps because of the fact of having experienced it firsthand. We had lost, he had lost, two sons. He understood his father's pain, and two brothers, his two sons Er and Onan, leaving his son Shelah with the pain of his separation. And he saw God and he saw how God reunited his family by granting him two sons, Phares and Serah, and giving his son Shelah two new brothers back. He had also taken on a leading role among his brothers, but it was not yet complete. When doing the previous reading, I do not know what was going on in the heads of all his brothers before the imprisonment of Benjamin, but it seems that the moment he decided to approach and speak was a turning point in Judah's consolidation as a leader. What did Joseph observe about Judah? He denoted a more mature man, not guided by his impulse, by doing things without thinking. We see earlier when he saw his brother, he was driven by the emotion of rejecting Joseph. When he was going to mark his daughter in law with Tamar, he will do so marked by his impulse of anger. On this occasion, his impulse to move began. He approached, but he put a sign of taking control of his emotions when he began to speak. God did not change his personality or his emotions, but now Judah took the control by focusing his emotions on reason before acting on it. How many people lost business opportunities for not knowing how to manage their emotions? How many people lose their families, home, marriages for not knowing how to control their emotions? The path to happiness and prosperity begins by balancing emotions and action in the form of impulse. We read below, verse 18. I pray, my Lord, that your servant may speak a word in the presence of my Lord, and that your anger may not be kindled against your servants, because you are equal to Paro. Literally, it does not say to speak a word in the presence of my Lord, but the expression is, let my words enter your ears. For the first time, the lion showed that he had the expression of a sheep. Judah now began to speak with reason as well as his heart. It denotes humility, not the arrogance he previously showed in the episode of Tamar. In addition, he recognized his position before the viceroy and spoke wisely. To be happy and prosperous again, we must understand our position, be diligent in speaking prudently, but also be honest in our words, because although you may not believe it, people know when you are not being sincere and honest in what you say and express. For example, I cannot tell anyone or someone that I'm happy with a bitter face. There is no congruence. Between verse 19 and 34, Judah begins to be honest and sincere and shows that he has now assumed the role of leader among his brother. Judah separated from his family after the episode with Joseph, and then perhaps due to hunger, they were reunited. Now we see Midal Kened Midat measure for measure. Since Judah sold Joseph as a slave, he is now forced to offer himself as a slave to Joseph. Although it is true that Joseph did not have a good relationship with his brother in the past, I believe that he knew who had sold him. I believe that God had to heal both Joseph and Judah's heart, because in order to be Israel, there had to be a reconciliation and unification of the brothers. This topic is so important that the prophet Ezekiel, in the Haftarah portion of this week, speaks of the offspring of Joseph and that of Judah, and how it is necessary to unite them so that they become one. Before God, there are no two kingdoms of Israel. To reestablish and to reunite family relationships, honest and sincere dialogue is necessary. It was more than clear that Joseph, as described in chapter 45, was making a superhuman effort to contain his emotions. Galna was healing him while he listened to his brother incognito. They had done teshuvah. And indeed, with teshuvah, the balance of all things returns. And Joseph also did teshuvah for the resentment that may have been in him. Chapter 45 orders everyone to leave the place where the argument with his brother was taking place. Until that moment, he had been the viceroy, dressed as Egyptian and speaking as Egyptian language. His brother did not recognize him. In order not to humiliate them, He made everyone leave his presence, and that is where he was able to release his emotions. Part of the balance to release emotions, something that I personally find very difficult to do, but is part of being human. We are not made of stone. We are not made of inner material. We are human, and we must show our emotion in a healthy way. Containing emotions brings illness and pain to the soul. That is why it says literally, he began to cry out loud. I do not know what release of emotion he had, but he must have felt a release in his soul. Only after he released his emotion, he was able to speak and say, Ani Joseph, I am Joseph. At first, his brothers did not believe him. How is possible that a slave in condition of that time could be alive and now is a viceroy? Then, as Judah did before, he approached. He does an action. And it says, he approached. That means Joseph approached, okay? That is, Israel is reunited again. He restarted his dialogue, confirming that he was Joseph, his brother, and confirmed the fact that only who were at the pit knew, the one you sold. At this moment, Joseph understood why he spent 22 years of pain, sadness, bitterness, humiliation, harassment, physical tiredness, exhaustion, among many other experiences that a slave lives. And he repeats 3 times, God sent me before you. The issue was not longer personal. The issue was that God makes everything well in his time. So to be happy and prosperous, one must not regard today as the end, but as the means that God has arranged us for us to grow, always keeping in mind that the present life is for my good. So though I could go into much more detail in the following verses that are associated with the same subject, we can say that the road to happiness and prosperity is not an easy path, but rather is a winding one full of vicissitudes, in which God will make us go through different moments that are not so easy, such as facing our painful past, dealing with those people who are not so accessible to us, and reaching the point of balance between emotions and actions. I wish that the secular cycle of 220 of 20 to 20, 25 be good, that the time that passes between Hanukkah and Pesach will be good, and that the light that illuminated us at Hanukkah help us to be light to those around us. The best of the best for everyone. Shabbat Shalom.